G'day guys, welcome back to Supercoach with DR and welcome to the Round 8 Stock Market video. Hope you're having a cracking week so far. Now firstly, you'll notice the background's looking a little bit different. That's because I'm recording at school today. My internet at home is absolutely buggered. So we just managed to record the Swordplay potty last night. It was uploaded at 3:30 a.m. Ended up having to go to mum and dad's place, get the spare key, sneak in and upload it there. So it's been an absolute nightmare, but what can you do with technology? Whenever you rely on it, it tends to let you down. So apologies also in advance if there is any background noise from the kids. Unfortunately, you just can't help that. But let's get into the stocky for this week. A really, really big week for us. There are many popular premiums under injury clouds. Lots of us are really struggling for cash gen at the moment. So it's not as easy as the old one up, one down. If we look into the future, there's no real rookies that are really screaming pick me with their hand up, but hopefully we might have some debutants this week that we may even have to go on early in the coming weeks. Now, up the top, we have Alex Chincotta, an absolute no-brainer. If you don't have this bloke in your side, he is an absolute must-have, non-negotiable this week. Pause the video, make sure you get him in. The man below him, Sam Simpson, is a mature age player, played in Geelong's last grand final. He's playing that small forward role at the moment. We think it's probably for Stengel until he returns. Scoring potential isn't off the charts, but if you're going to play small forward, you might as well play for a decent side like Geelong. Cogs we've got in the middle. He's been great value for the last couple of weeks now. This is probably the last week where you do jump on if you are looking for that value. Will Setterfield, super disappointing. So I was hoping to hold on to this fella till around the buys, but after watching him last week, I just can't carry this bloke. Break even is up to 117, so I think I've got to move him on. And all the way down the bottom is Cam McKenzie. He's been there for the last couple of weeks. I know some coaches are still holding him, but I think this is a time to cut ties, cut him loose, look to downgrade to a Chincotta type, or look to upgrade to possibly one of our fallen premiums. So I'm going to keep the intro really short, as I said, guys. Let's get straight into it and see who's sitting at the top of the list for our 500k plus defenders. At the top list this week, we have James Sicily, a quiet first quarter for 10 points, only the 2 effective kicks, then had a massive second quarter, 9 touches at almost 100% efficiency, a super long range goal off a step. That was a 59-point quarter. I'm guessing his biggest for the season. Almost on triple figures by 3/4 time. Made a great spoil. Then an unlucky in the back free to Arthur Jones, which led to a Norton shot on goal. Think he hit the post from memory. But a decent last quarter to finish with a 125 plus. A nice hit back game. I still think Hardwick is affecting his ceiling. He's missing some bonus kick-ins, etc. But at the same time, he still looks set to be a top 6 defender. I'd happily trade him in, and he's at a really friendly price point. Sis is a buy now, in my opinion. Luke Ryan, the most disrespected defender in Supercoach. He's had such a consistent season, averaged 95 plus for the previous 3 seasons, and looks set to obtain a career high average this year. If you're after a defender pod, go for it. 127 on the weekend for a season average of 121.3. That is really impressive, but again, you are paying up for him. Sinclair had Burn Jones running for him for a bit in the first, but he still had 13 touches in the opening quarter, so that obviously didn't affect him. 45 points for that, just went bang. Continued on well to score a nice 109, 33 touches and 5 tackles. Probably deserved a bit more. He plays North, Adelaide, GWS, Hawthorn, Sydney and Richmond in the next 6 weeks. So a nice fixture, and I expect him to go close to, say, 130 this week. A very solid trading option, and my best buy for this week. He should dine out against the Roos. Stewart had a slow start to the game and then a red-hot start to the second quarter. Took 4 marks, had a tackle, and had 5 kicks at 100% efficiency just in a short period. All of a sudden, the great man is sitting on 58 points in the blink of an eye. He had a great ground ball get where he tapped it to himself and then hit Cameron on the chest. Just elite. Another 10 disposals in the third to be sitting on 114 at 3/4 time. Marked it just before the final siren as well. This in the third. Look, quick, get onto the boot, but just not enough time there. And then a bit of a quiet last quarter to finish on 123 points. It was looking like a 140, but it is what it is. Still a ripping score. Sam Docherty, didn't he come back earlier than expected and hit the ton, which was very frustrating as a former owner, to be honest. Was against West Coast, though. Had 24 touches, 6 marks, and a tackle. I think it's just best to watch him for at least another week. see if he looks good in his role, and then make more of an informed decision, I suppose, then. Seagull, 25 touches with 80% of those being kicks. Only the 2 kick-ins, but Sydney only had 5 in total, so that was a reason for lower count there. When at 80% efficiency, which is clean, not many contested, but that's all good. 432 metres gained, also laid a few tackles. Adam Sard, it's a pretty easy skip for now, I think. Possibly look to get him in when he presents a little bit more value. Dacos, we thought that Benny Keys would run with him, and that was the case most of the days. And shout out to AFL Doodles for the custom Benny Keys symbol there. He is a real talent. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. Absolute legend of a bloke. But back to Dacos, he had 10 touches in the first, but only 28 points. Came off limping in the second, had his calf rubbed down. Thought he was looking to come back on, then he sat back down, then came back on, but really struggled to make an impact, and by far his lowest score of the season with a 72. But that's all good. We've all got him. It was always going to be a very risky captaincy option, and I think he'll bounce back without a doubt. He has missed some training this week, so still under a slight injury cloud. Maybe make sure you got some emergencies in place there. And Jordan Dawson, a lovely 150 after a disappointing score the week before. We'd all love to own him, so congratulations if you do. But due to his price point, I'd advise to look at those blokes that present more value, such as your Sisses, Sinclairs, and even a Will Day, who we'll talk about soon. Am I expecting the same average? No, I really do rate Dawson, but 666,900, that is a lot of money to pay up. Go for it if you want. If you've got the money and you're not dealing with a bunch of dead rookies, then go for your life. Trade the great man in. But if you are struggling for cash gen, like many of us are, maybe someone to pass on for now, and let's just hope and pray that he comes down in price. On to the defenders, 250 to 500k, and I have had a few questions about the man at the top of the list this week. One was from my man Daryl Hall. Shout out to you, Dazza. And I can see why Dazza was asking the question, because Will Powell comes under 500,000. He's got a pretty solid role, and as we know, cash gen is super tight at the moment. So I love the fact that people are looking outside the box. But let's have a quick chat about him. He's had 2 really nice scores on the trot. Seems to be the main man on kick-in duties, but certainly not exclusive. He's played on from only 9 of a possible 15 kick-outs. So someone needs to get in his ear. Let this man know that he is flushing Supercoach points down the drain. But on the weekend, had 28 touches, 23 of those being kicks, as well as 13 marks, when at 82% efficiency. So without a doubt, a talented player, and as I mentioned before, has a really good role for Supercoach. Now, at the time of recording, he's in less than 300 teams. So at 482k, you'd want to be really confident, because if the pick backfires, then it can do a lot of damage to your overall rank. But if he manages to average, say, 3 figures, then it's a massive win. Now, one good point that Janeth brought up in the Swordplay Potty this week, make sure you go and check that out if you got time, is the fact that he scores much better in wins as compared to losses. So if you look at their fixture in the next 6 weeks, I can only personally see 1 win against the Eagles. I'm not saying they couldn't get up in a couple of those other matches, but they do face some pretty tough opponents. So given that fact, when I take everything into account, I would pass on Will Powell, because I think he's just a little bit too risky. I've got 3 symbols there: buy now, caution, and pod. I'm leaning more towards the caution myself. But if you're a lone wolf and you're prepared to take that risk, you can go for it, and it could work out well. There is some potential with the pick. Nick Newman, certainly a pod in only 1% of teams. He's really competing with his own teammates, isn't he? And Sard and Doherty for a spot in our sides. After a 58 in round 5, he's hit back with scores of 121 and 139 in the last 2. Had a massive stat sheet in the weekend playing West Coast. 34 touches, with 26 of those being kicks, 14 tackles, 5 marks and a goal. Harry Himmelberg, well, if you took the risk last week, ouch. He played as a forward with a stint in the ruck, kicked 1-1 from 15 disposals. Not a Supercoach selection to consider at this stage, unfortunately. Connor McKenna had some early touches, but Rich was really controlling it down back. Had a decent second, kicked a snag, then acquired a third. The umpires missed an obvious holding the ball free he should receive, so that's frustrating when he should have received a free, another possession. Points stolen there by the men in yellow. The good thing about this pick, and it's not great being a Brisbane supporter, but for Supercoach it is, Daniel Rich will be out with a quad issue for at least 3 weeks. That means Connor McKenna will have a much friendlier role. I think they'll look to use him more coming out of the defensive line, and I also think that he may get some bonus kick-ins. So if you are an owner, certainly hold for now. Look, if you really need to trade him up to get a primo, you can, but I'm expecting him to give us some of those 70-plus scores over the next 3 anyway. The Pepsi Max King, I do have the chop symbol on there. This is very much team dependent, so go for it if you need to downgrade or upgrade somewhere. Personally, I'm holding on to the man. He's got good DPP status. He's giving us some reliable enough scores. He did drop that low 39, but we mostly see 50s to 60s plus from the Pepsi Max King. How's it going to go this week on the Friday night? I'm not too sure, but remember, he can be a really good loop with your Constables, your Chincotters. There's a few defensive mids that are in our sides this year. So I'm a hold, but if you want to chop, that is absolutely fine. Hayden Young certainly hasn't hit the expected heights we thought he could reach pre-season, but a decent 3 weeks, 90, 88 and a 128 last week. 10 touches for 25 points in the first, was highly involved, but you're expecting a bigger score from 10 disposals. Ended with 33, 19 of those being kicks, possibly another nothing pick. But again, there is some sort of a chance he could work out. Just too risky for me, though. Haynes continued on with his good form, was really clean on the weekends. Almost every one of his 18 disposals hit the target. 8 marks with some intercepts. That was nice. Had 7 rebound 50s, 7 1%ers, so playing a great team role. He's been a decent pick if you jumped on him a few weeks ago. Can give a poor score, though, so floor is always a concern. A real penny pincher here. I don't think he can compete with the top dogs for averages. But again, if you're really, really strapped for cash, he is an option just to shout out. Jimby, times let go of him. Just hasn't reached rookie heights we're expecting. But playing for West Coast, that must be tough with lack of talent around him to support. Some were holding for a reliable rookie score, but he just isn't showing that at the moment. Daniel is a real pod, isn't he? Could you go there? 469,000. Look, he's very similar, I suppose, to a Hayden Young type. Maybe Nick Haynes. You could go there if you want. Has defensive forward status, so you can swing him with your Jay-Z's, your Sheebles, your Seamuses. But, look, I just think there are safer and better options. For me, anyway. You could go there if you want. Lone Wolf approach again. Will Day, after 2 weeks off from suspension, they started him on the bench. Could not believe it, but did have a good first quarter. 9 touches, a couple of clearances, 27 points for his efforts there. Quiet in the first half, the second quarter, but kicked a nice goal when the scores were tight. A nice lead-up mark as well, but then kicked it directly to the Dogs. Had the right idea. Execution just let him down. Then should have received a high free, but didn't. But then, not long after, got a hold on the ball 3-4. Great to see that he bounced up, just didn't sit down sooking. Another solid quarter in the second to be on 61 points at halftime. This is looking like a 120 game. Came out hard in the third for 5 touches in a few minutes. And one thing I did notice as well, watching this game again, he is fantastic through traffic, has a really great step. Just love watching Will Day. Free kick against for insufficient intent. And then sort of went out of it for the rest of the third quarter. Can't complain. It was a 10-touch quarter, but I felt like he was scored low. Only 20 points for that. Again, had a very slow start to the fourth. Spent 7 minutes straight on the bench. Got a few late touches, but again, efficiency did let him down. Finished the game with 30 touches, which was a game high. Again, really passed the eye test. If I'm to be critical, it's probably his tackle count, but all in all, a great debut. So close to triple figures. And if you are looking for a defender this week, I don't think it's too late to jump on, but this will be the last week. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that all the blokes on this slide are certainly on the chopping block. We got Stocker there. He's been fantastic, but if you look at that break even compared to the 3-rounder, getting very close. If you need to move him on, I think it's fine. Same as Jones, very quiet, 27 points at 3/4 time last week. Owners were hoping for a big end from the game. Did do that to a degree with 6 touches and a few marks. Went past his break even, made some cash with a mid-50s score. Whitfield been extremely disappointing. Maybe one just to keep on the watch list. I know not many people own him, but you can get him super cheap, maybe in a week or two if you are really desperate. McLeany, well, he's done pretty well, hasn't he, this season? If you jumped on him a couple of weeks ago, it probably wasn't the right move. If you look at that break even, certainly in the red, he can achieve a 72. The projected score there says 69. So, look, you could hold him if you wanted for another one, but I certainly think he is someone that we can move on. And Jordan Ridley, as soon as I saw that he was matched up on Cameron, I knew a low score was coming up. Just not the role you want to see. he was following him everywhere. Took an intercept mark, had a few touches in the first, then a quiet second, and then started the second half on Tom Hawkins because wasn't he just monstering poor Zerk Thatcher? Nice intercept to start the third, lovely kick, but Phillips dropped a sitter. That move worked really well for him. Going to Hawkins, 8 touches, 7 of those kicks at 100% efficiency. But again, underscored for some reason, only gave him 30 points for that. I think the main reason for this is probably a lack of contested possession. So with Ridley, look, I think he's fine to keep, but at the same time, he's stinking it up. Those on-field scores aren't great, and if he's looking to play more of a key position role, I just think we need to move him on. On to the defenders, under 250k, and up the top we have Alex Chincotta. I'll keep this really simple, won't even bother going through his stats. He's an absolute 100% non-negotiable must-have rookie. If he's named, which we all expect that he will be, then bring him in without hesitating. He played alongside both Doherty and Sard last week. Newman was playing well as well, so surely he's now gone past Cowan. He's delivered some nice scores, can find the peel, and comes at the lowest price possible with added DPP. Seems to tick all the boxes, so get him in now without hesitation, as I said. Wagner most likely won't play this week. Job security is extremely shaky, even if he does get named. Seamus, an okay start to the game, then warmed into it. A great 1v1 contest win against Waitman in the second, but then turned the ball over. But then follows up with a great tackle, super second and third efforts. Thought he looked awesome, then he gets subbed off in the third quarter. 41 points was really disappointing, as he was on track for, I'd say, 60 to 65, which is more than respectable. I wouldn't buy him now. I certainly wouldn't buy him now. He could have been a decent on-field option for us, but now we're really paranoid, aren't we? It's such a shame. Hold, but don't buy. Well, look, I suppose you can, but the sub is obviously a real risk. I think that the ship has probably sailed there, and as you can see, we do have the sub symbol there. Whenever you see the subway symbol, it's not a good sign for a rookie. Ollie Lord, another bloke on the bubble, but I like the other options. Nice DPP swing with a Seamus Mitchell or one of the North boys, averaging 7.5 touches. It just isn't enough. A 35 last week. Doesn't feel with great confidence, so I'll pass to me. Tyler Young, trade or hold, up to you. Think he may be under an injury cloud this week. And Cowan, as we mentioned before, definitely time to trade. He's not making any more cash anytime soon, and looks like Chincotta has overtaken him, in the short term at least. On to the midfielders, 500k plus, and up the top we have Cripper, followed up a 130 with a big 150 this week. I think he's a real deal. He's only had the 2 sub-100 scores, that's an 80 and a 99. Aside from that one, 121, 112, 114, and then the 2 big scores that I just mentioned. On the weekend, had 33 disposals, with 23 of those being contested. But the kicker was actually his lack of kicks. Only 6 to go along with 27 handballs. 8 tackles as well. He really beat up on West Coast midfield. Does face some tougher assignments in the next 5 weeks with Lions, Dogs, Pies, Swans and Ds. So not the easiest run in 16% of teams. So I think he can go there, averaging 115.6 on the season, close to 600k, but that break even of 54, I think he does present a little bit of value. A danger, I'll tell you what, had another really strong first half of this game, 15 touches, 7 contested for 62 points. We've seen a bit of vintage danger, haven't we, over the last month? Satherfield started on him in the third. He almost hit the ton by 3/4 time, finished with 124. And it is getting harder to find excuses not to pick him. Apart from his age, he is absolutely tearing it up. Mr. Petrarca, talk about tearing it up on the weekend. 48 points from 8 touches in the first, and he only had 69% time on ground up to that point. Gathered 10 touches in the second, and had a goal to his name. A 90-point plus first half from him. Look back to his absolute best, and then he certainly didn't slow down. Ended with 35 touches, 16 of those contested, 4 clearances, 9 inside 50s, a few tackles, and 3 goals won. Complete performance and a massive 167 for his efforts. Should be close to top 8, so one to consider. But remember, you can't get those points back from last week. Anderson, 15 touches, 4 clearances and a goal, 73 points at halftime. Really stepped up. Did basically the same in the second, to win with 32 touches in total. Only the one really decent score, apart from that, which is 134 against the Saints. 4 scores below 93. That's the thing that scares me off. 2 count doesn't really affect his role or CBA rate too much. So a no for me, but wouldn't blame you if you've got more faith than I do. Titch, look, he'll give you between 100 and 110 most weeks. 68% CBA rate on the weekends was a bit above average, but nothing too exciting. At the same time, if that predicted average is good enough for you at M8, then I suppose is a cheap option. Shorty was playing down back again, 13 touches and 6 marks in the first half, going at over 90% efficiency, 56 points there. Ended up with 94 points from 32 touches. Only the 14% CBAs on the weekend, took 50% of the kick-ins in round 6, and then 2 out of 6 this week. Only played on from 1 though, so he's not relying on kick-ins. That's a good thing. Looks much better down back than in the midfield, in my opinion. Almost a certainty to get DPP status, but never lock these things in. Could be a decent pod move though. Bont, quiet first quarter, only the 4 touches. Nash went to him as expected. Almost a big goal from 50, but hit the post. 25-point quarters, there, went begging. But then went bang in the second, 9 touches with over half contested, 2 clearances that led directly to goals. Great tackle, holding the ball free. Took advantage of buggers on him. So I always hate that. So your player gets a free kick and then they play advantage. It's like, no, stop the play. Doesn't matter if it is advantage. This guy needs a disposal. So always a little bit frustrating there, but you cannot blame him, obviously. I think from memory, Trelaw took advantage and absolutely butchered it. So a little bit frustrating, but it is what it is. Then went absolutely missing in the third. 1 touch, 1 tackle. Only 78% TOG in that quarter as well. Just 14 touches in the first 3 in his 200th. I was expecting a big last quarter from him, and he had 6 tackles, finished on 125 Supercoach points. A bit of a down day, and still scores 125. I think that's absolutely brilliant. The ceiling this man has is great, and even, as we just mentioned, on a quieter day, he can still give you a really nice score. So I think he's close to a must-have in his side. But again, we're probably not paying up for Bont at this stage with that massive price. It's close to 700k. Green, great to have him back in this week. 31 touches, only the 10 contested, which is a very low ratio for him. Only went at 64%, again, which hurts. But did make up for that by laying a super impressive 13 tackles. What a beast. 78% CBA rate. That was actually a season low. Hopefully it held him, as he's looking good. I'll take 118 points every day of the week. So well done, Sam. Good to have you back. Jelly had close to 30 touches this week, but disposal efficiency was poor. Had 6 tackles, which helped him get to an 88. 72% CBAs, which is actually his second lowest for the season. So Green, Jelly, close to season lows there. No real concerns in regards to CBAs though, but there are concerns with his scoring. We've seen 2 great scores of 148 in round 2 and a 139 in round 6, but we've also seen a pair of 80s and an 88, which just isn't good enough for a premium mid. So I'd be holding as an owner, but I certainly wouldn't invest. Parrish had a big first half, 21 touches, 64 points, 8 were contested, and he was going at, I think, mid-60s for efficiency, so that was a reason for his lower scoring. Had 30 touches by the end of the third, but only 85 points by the end of the game. It was just the same old story. Collected a truckload of possessions, but doesn't receive a truckload of points. 40 touches, but only 108. So my main issue here is that it seems like, well, he needs to go, 50 and kick a couple of goals to score a 150 plus. His ceiling has sort of disappeared. So yeah, I'm just not huge on the Darcy Parish pick. Sam Walsh, an interesting selection, looking like possible DPP. So wouldn't that throw a spanner in the works if you've got a completed forward line, averaging 117 over his last 3. But on the weekend, his CBA rate went right down. Only the 26% after 83% the week before. Very confusing for Supercoach purposes. Certainly an option alongside Cripps, but for the price, I'd probably look to go a little bit cheaper and save some coin. Brayshaw, what a disappointing season. Got the biggest gift you'll see on the weekend. Kitty was standing there. I think he marked the ball, got a free kick or something, but didn't hear the play on call. Andy wrapped him up, got a shot from 15 directly in front. Poor old Kitty. In the last 2 weeks, so he's only averaged 64% CBAs, whereas in rounds 4 and 5, he averaged 85. To put that into perspective, how bad his season actually is, here's 3 names that are out-averaging him. Blake Acres, Dylan Shield, and Max Holmes. So, look, given that fact, I'd need to see some really strong form before considering. and I'd be quite happy paying an extra 30 to even 50k just for that peace of mind. Sarah, O'Connor lines up on him for the first bounce. Wasn't a hard tag though. Atkins played on him for a while. It just seemed like whenever a Geelong opponent walked past him, they'd give him a bump. It was just a real focus for them to make him feel uneasy. Only the 2 effective disposals in the first, got up to a 25-point quarter-time score with a few tackles to boost him up. There were some small passages of elite play, and that's why we love to select merit. There was this kick up to AMT in the third, hit him up on the chest. That was a beautiful play. But look, all in all, it wasn't a terrific performance. Didn't quite get to triple figures. But in saying that, I still think he's a pretty solid selection. He is a buy now, 106 break even. We want to see that CBA time increase. Hopefully that will be the case in the next couple of weeks as well. But round 10 is the time where I think it'd be good to pick him up. Libba, look, I'd probably wait another week just to be safe, given the fact he's coming back from concussion. But he has been a great pick, though, one to wholly consider. His teammate McRae had a good start to the game with a 30-point plus first quarter. Quiet second, much better third. A bit like a yo-yo, half-decent fourth. But a sub-100 isn't too exciting as an option. Sarong, 11 touches in the first, but slowed up a little bit after that. Only had the 27 in total, and it was his second lowest tackle count for the year. Only 1 sub-ton as well for the season, and that came all the way back in round 1, where I think he received some attention. So another one to highly consider. Only thing that puts me off is that price, though. Degoe, poor score on the weekend, but he's had a solid year to date. Decent price, but should be cheaper in a week or two. Now, there has been a lot of discussion about this man, Jack Steele. Had a super start to last week, 11 touches, 7 contested, and 3 tackles in the opening quarter. That had him close to 45 points. Really got me looking closely. Got me pretty excited, but a bit of a slow second quarter, only the 4 touches, then hits back in the second half with 13 touches, 6 tackles, and a goal. Now, at the price, he's very much on my radar this week or the next. I think it's probably safer to wait the week just to make sure he can repeat last week's efforts. But if you need an upgrade, if you're hunting for value, and given the fact he's playing the Roos this week, I think he can go for it. We haven't seen the best of him for the majority of the season, and he came back much earlier than expected. We all know this story, but apparently he isn't in pain, everything's holding up well, and what impressed me the most was his tackle count. It's extremely encouraging. The risk is that he reverts back to his earlier season form, becomes another bloke that we just hate having in our teams. I don't think that's going to be the case as I'm jumping on, but it is risky, and we can't just rely on past scoring history from previous years. So with Jack Steele, I'm going for it, but the choice is yours. It's a little bit risky. You can see I've got the buy now, the target, and the binoculars, so whatever choice you make, I think it's okay. Millsy, only the 80 points on the weekend, 23 touches and 2 tackles, few clangers, and not looking like our primo of the past. Just watch for now, and if his CBAs increase, just bring him in for a bargain later on. Lairdy, we're a little bit worried that the desk wouldn't play last week, but he took the field, looked great for the first 3 quarters. Disposal counts of 11, 7 and 9 for a total of 27 at 3-quarter time. Everything was looking pretty rosy, but unfortunately completely died off from the last. Only had 1 effective handball and a single tackle. And it was announced, halfway through the quarter that he was a sub. We all panicked. Then it swapped to Saligo. All of a sudden we breathed a sigh of relief, but he may as well have been subbed out in the end. I noticed he was doing the team things first, blocking for Rankin at forward stoppages, etc., which shows good leadership. But there are still doubts over his fitness this week. So at this stage, I just think he's a wait and see. It'd be too risky to invest with the current issues that he's got. If you're an owner, make sure you've got an emergency in place because, this one's looking a little bit dicey. Clary went bang the first. Absolutely dominated. Bloke was everywhere. Common went down. Howe was subbed on, so I was praying for a Howe tags and on-owner, but that didn't happen. Had a lazy 16 touches in the first for 49 points. Unbelievable stuff. He was unreal. Had another 7 touches to be on a total of 23 at halftime for 85 points. Quite to start the third, but kept going. Had 14 touches in the second half and finished on 134 points. This is possibly as cheap as he's going to be in a while, this week or next. But again, the issue is, can you afford to bring in someone at this price, or do you need to focus on value and ultimately get as many rookies off field as possible and just leave yourself some cash in the bank for your next upgrade. The rookie situation isn't looking great, so make sure to keep that in mind. If you do have money in the bank though, absolutely go for it. But I think this one's really, really team dependent, and having some cash in the bank, it can't be understated for mine. And Lachie Neale, I'm not too keen on him at the moment with his high break even. I think it's obvious just to put him on your watch list and then wait and see. On to the midfielders, 250 to 500k. Up the top, we have Braden Fiorini. Now, I've got a couple of these wrong in the past, but I think he could be a bit of a trap. In saying that, if you're going for a different type of money-making on-field point strategy, then I can understand, and I hope it works out. Scores of 11, 42, 54, 79, and 101 means he has improved that score every week. But those lower games scare me off. On the weekend, 20 touches, 9 marks, and 6 tackles, but only the 14% CBAs. We thought with 2 count that may go up 50, 44% the week before, but it had the opposite effect. So given that fact, I would stay away. It'd be different if that CBA rate went up to say 65 plus, but it doesn't look like it will. As I said, could work out, but I think the chances are slim. Baker, quiet first half for only 20 points, had a much better third, got involved. Long story short, had close to a 50-point second half to get his cash gen going again. Hold for now if you can. Ashy, wow. Had a bit of a quiet start to the game, but then 6 touches and goal of the year in the first 3 minutes of the second half. Daniel Wells, eat your heart out, mate. He did that on the angle. Had a fantastic second term, kicked another goal, had 16 disposals in the second half, and was unbelievable. 100 plus score, and I'm looking forward to more of those in my team. Firm hold for now, unless he gets you a really important primo. Finn Callahan looked fantastic, really showed off his skill set in the weekend. 26 touches at close to 90% efficiency. 10 marks shows he's working hard into space. 356 metres gain was nice, but we'd like to see a little bit more from that stat sheet. The bulk of his touches were in the defensive half, so pushing back well. Good to see a decent game from him. Definitely hold if you own. Hollins looks fine to chop, I think, if you need to, but at the same time, he's one of those reliable rookies that you may need as coverage in the short term or even through the buys. Walpole had a really good first quarter, solid half overall to be on 50 points at half time, but like many other Hawks, slowed up in the second half to finish with a mid-80s score. You could hold for another week and then flip, I think. Parker, 33 touches, 13 contested, 4 tackles, and a snag for 116 points on the weekend. That was his highest score of the year, so not a sexy pick, one for the cash-strapped people. He's already lost close to 90k on that starting price. Georgie Hewitt, his CBA lifted right up, and that was corresponding with Walsh's CBA rate going down. It tended whopping 94% CBAs alongside Pito. That's 27% up from last week. We know what happened last year, jumped to premium status early in our defensive line. What a blessing it was as well. Wish we had a few more Hewitts this year, but just hasn't really hit the heights this year. There's a bit of hope with this pick, but if you're dead set broke, you're desperate to make a midfield upgrade, you could do worse. 124 points on the weekend is great, but it's the first time he's hit triple figures this year. Yeah, that's a little bit scary, isn't it, when you are bringing in a midfield primo? And that actually surprised me a bit, but at the end of the day, that's why he's priced under 500k. Perriman, 21 touches, going at 86% efficiency and a whopping 9 tackles and 3 goals. Only had the 31% CBA rate this week, up to 70 plus last week. Certainly a pod, but yeah, it would take some big kahunas, I think. Ollie Wines. Wowee, it's hard to believe that this bloke won a Brownlow a couple of years ago. A season average of 71 and yet to hit triple figures in 2023. I'd rather keep Ashcroft than trade him in. One to obviously keep a watch on, maybe as a cheap M9 for those that have the luxury to do so, averaging 57% CBAs, but had a season low in the 30s last week. Sorry, Ollie, but I've got the poo symbol on him for a reason. Philippou, definite sell in my books. Look at that break even. He'll start to leak some big cash in the coming weeks with that numerical spike score. But in saying that, does play the ruse this week. So if it's ever going to happen, it's going to be now. At the same time, I'd still advise to move on. Hopper, extremely slow start, just the 7 touches, 67% tog for 25 points at half time. This was not looking good, but had a better second half. Oh, look, I'm holding for now, hoping for a spike score against the Eagles. He's got it in him. We've seen it a couple of times before this season already. Arguably the easiest midfield matchup in the comp against the Eagles, so I'm backing him in to reach 100 plus this week. If he does, we probably continue to hold as his cash gen will get going again. But if not, he could be a trade-out target next week. Ideally, a great player to hold up until his bye, though. He can cover every bye until his last one. Unfortunately, though, I don't think many of us will be in that situation. And Mr. Setigo, first touch was a handball to Geelong, which led to a goal. Second disposal was a kick directly to Radaglia, one of his only disposals for the match. Just not clean at all. 6 disposals for 10 points at quarter time was disappointing. Wasn't spending a lot of time around the ball, but Geelong's bigger bodies were beating him up in the middle, so he was sent in there. Played on danger for a while. Had a better start to the second with a few early touches, but his next were just turnovers. Was butchering it terribly. I said I was holding for a while last week, but after this eye test, he's gone ski. My eyes were burning. It was such a rough watch. I'm really sorry, Joey, but the Setigo is going to get sent to the pastures, but the Man of Steele, I think, will be a solid replacement. I hope. On to the midfielders under 250k, and as you can see, it's not looking great here. The cupboard is pretty bare, but keep in mind, we do have some midfield forwards that we'll talk about a little bit later on. But we've got Matty Johnson up the top. Was really getting around it in the first. Main issue was disposal efficiency. Dropped a couple of really easy marks. Won an intercept attempt from memory. But the signs were good. He was actually getting involved. Had 8 touches for the quarter, which was impressive. 25 fantasy, but only the 17 Supercoach due to those missed marks being labelled as clangers. Then an absolute muppet act with a dangerous tackle on Zorko. Mid-30s score at half-time. Doesn't seem like the cleanest player I've seen. A bit fumbly in the contest. Did have a great little passage of play in the third with 3 quick touches and an assist to Brayshaw. Then a soft free kick against in the last. Seems a bit unlucky with his free kicks paid against, but it is what it is. I mentioned he was fumbly, and a perfect example of this was in the last where he drops an uncontested mark, then goes off his left, shanks a 15-metre kick. Now, I haven't watched a lot of him, but I assume this was his best game he's played so far. Career high for disposals, but come on, man, get the memo. Just a really, really silly act. Dump Zorko on his head, and unfortunately, he will be missing for the next 2 weeks. McVee, 9 touches for 23 points at half-time. Another slow start scoring-wise. Didn't do a whole lot in the second to finish on 43. One he could chop soon, but again, another player that has good job security. And Rouston, one of the biggest poo rookies you'll see this year. Nothing personal, but I just hate having him on my side. On to the big boys in the ruck, and at the top of the list, we have Bryn Teakle on the bubble this week at an inflated price due to debuting last year. 18 hitouts and 8 handballs on the weekend against the Saints. That's nothing to write home about, but did lay 7 tackles, which allowed him to register an acceptable 60 points. Scored 85 against West Coast the week before, but don't know how much we take out of that. Now, the great JB from Dr. Supercoach seems to think that Lysette is on the way out, so main competition for Teakle seems to be Finlayson. Due to his price, I'm not a fan. If he had DPP status, that may sway me, but paying 200k for a player on the bench doesn't really make a lot of sense for me. But if you really need some cover and think he can hold his spot, he could work out. If you are planning on, say, trading him in for Grundy and leaving him at R2, in my opinion, that is super risky. Samson Ryan, just 1 goal and 3 touches till half-time, but had a decent second half. Provides some decent ruck cover, as well as some on-field points for those playing him at R3. When he spent time in the ruck, he looked fantastic, but unfortunately, they've got Miller playing in there, and he's just spending a little bit too much time up forward for mine. Ivan Soldo. Now, there's been a bit of chatter about bringing this man in this week, but I am not a fan of the move. There's been a lot of stuffing around on the ruck line this year due to a bit of carnage, so I think it's best to invest in one of the best. I think Nank is only a few weeks away, so this could end up very similar to what happened with Grundy when Gawn came back. Will you make enough cash and gain enough on-field points to make it worth your while? Probably not for me. We have another week as well before his price changes, so that's another thing that puts me off. And I must admit, his DPP is handy, but not enough to push me over the line. Another man with DPP was the Rat. Just wasn't his day, dropping uncontested marks. Most weeks he's read the ball pretty well, but not this week it seems. Clawed his way to 32 points by three-quarter time. I was hoping for a big last quarter. Thought he had it in him. Just didn't happen though. On a day when Wiedemann kicks 5 on you, you know that you're struggling, aren't you? 43 points, not ideal on field, but I think that the man will bounce back. Rowan Marshall, come on down. My VC for the week. Had a half-decent first quarter, but not a great ratio. 31 fantasy for only 19 Supercoach. Rowan versus Power Pepper. Easy win, right down to Jason Horn-Francis. I was thinking, this is not looking good. But then the next ruck contest, he grabs it out, clean, leads to a goal, and had a great start to the second. Nice intercept, couple of holding the ball frees. Frustrating that a couple of his disposals weren't effective because of simple errors by his teammates, but then he almost kicked a goal on the run to put them back in front. Ended up having 8 disposals, 5 tackles just in the second. And if he had have slotted that goal through, I reckon he would have been on about 85 points, but a 75-point first half was unreal, particularly when he got the VC on him. To start the third, took a couple of intercept marks, and 10 minutes into the quarter was on 104. And then the last just continued to dominate and got a 159. Last week, we were all complaining about having him in our sides, and after last week, we are thanking the man for his wonderful effort. So hopefully that gives him a kick start and he'll continue to play well. Without, what's his name? I was going to say Campbell. Without Campbell in the side, I think he should be a decent pick for us at R2. Blitzarv, the ultimate swingman and a potential pod as a replacement for Grundy, but will he average enough compared to your Darcy's, your English? Probably not, but again, I don't think he'd be the worst move. Shrek had a good start to the game with 35 points from 6 touches and a contested mark and some hit-outs. Then just kept on trucking on, was giving his all, scored a 114. There was a scare though when news came through he might be doubtful for this week, but the legend that is Rhino Daniels tweeted that he was all good and he will certainly line up this week. And Rhino is a very trustworthy source, in my opinion, one of the best in the business. This is a massive relief for owners. Gorn had a quiet start with only 18 points in the first, went up to the mid-40s by half-time, but didn't look fantastic or anything, up to 71 at three-quarter time, but only added 9 points in the last quarter to finish on 80. So for now, I would be hesitant to go there. Hopefully he gets DPP and we can select him as a forward if he hits some form, but to select him as my R1 or R2 now, I would be slightly concerned. Witts, very slow start, 5 touches in the first half, 18 hit-outs. Look, I'm not sure about Witts. I'm finding him really hard to judge. I think you could jump on as a Grundy owner, but there's just something about him at the moment that I'm not loving. I'd much rather Shrek Darcy, unfortunately though, under that injury cloud. But at the end of the day, you just can't go wrong with the bloke that's at the bottom of the list. And Brodie Grundy, another very quiet start to the game, then gets a gift with a 50-metre penalty and a goal. Very nice for owners. He just seems to get his way out of scoring jail, but still somehow only on 7 points at quarter time. I think that must have been due to a couple of fumbles, maybe some sharked hit-outs, but not good at all. A very similar score to his first quarter last week, but Tog was 77%. Last week, I think it was in the mid-40s. Fast forward to half-time, and again, very similar last week, 28 points. That was scaled up to 32 during the halftime break. They must have added a tackle or a hit out to advantage, I'm guessing. 52 at three-quarter time, and then somehow got to 89 points. He is a definite trade out, in my opinion, but ideally you should have done it last week. And Tim English, extremely quiet in the first, just the one kick, a season low for sure, but then had a much better second term, couple of shots for goal, nailed one of them, some nice hit-outs to advantage, a very unlucky free against, only the 3 touches and a couple of tackles in the third. He did have some nice hit-outs though, but still sub 75. I was licking my lips as an on-owner, and he didn't do much in the fourth. And finally, some relief for us that don't have him with a 90. This was his first major blemish score-wise of the season, and it was a major surprise for me that it was against the Hawks. They're actually doing pretty well against opposition ruckmen. We can absolutely forgive this because he has been a monster this year. I have no issues with bringing in Tim English. I do have one slight issue, and that is simply the price. But if you want the best of the best, sometimes you just got to pay up. Onto the forwards, 500k plus, and we see a couple of key forwards up the top of the list. Charlie Curnow, what a game from the big man. A bag of 9. Was a really consistent game as well. Goal count by quarter was 2, 2, 3, and 2. A massive 8 contested marks, 11 marks inside 50. Would have been nice for him to get to 10, but he had an absolute night out, and I hope he's a lot quieter this week against the Lions. We've seen the key forwards, such as Cameron, Hawkins, and Curnow, all have huge games, but as we know, maybe apart from Cameron, their floors are relatively low. Ended up on 186 points, but remember, this was against West Coast. I reckon Relton Roberts could have kicked 5 against them last week. The Tomahawk, a 4-goal, 83-point first quarter, and he was just monstering Zerk Thatcher like a man playing on a little kid. Kicked another 2 in the second. Was like an absolute giant, sitting on 123 points at halftime. Had a quiet start to the third, but Martin gifted a handball to Danger, who hit him up on the chest, and he kicked his 7th. That was about it, though. Still got up to 150 points. Cogs, he was a great trading option a couple of weeks ago. Still a good trading option this week. I have him in the top 6 as things currently stand. He's a full-time mid, available as a forward, has premium scoring history, DPP status, so you can even hide him in your midfield for now. If he can score 100 plus, he'll go up over 20k next week. Taranto, another good start with a 60 plus point first quarter, and then he went bang and went even better in the second half. He can really hold his head up high as he's doing everything he can for his new club, leading by example, finding a load of the pill, and finally, we are seeing some ceiling games. That's 2 in a row now. He plays the first game on the Saturday this week against the Eagles, so I'm slapping the VC on him. I'm hoping that he can replicate his form from last fortnight, or even better, take the next step to 150 plus. The team to do it against is certainly the Eagles. Rosie, pretty safe sort of a pick. We've all got him. Didn't quite get to the ton, but 96 is acceptable. Butters scored exactly the same as Rosie with a 96. I like Cogs better, but you could look at him as a pod. I've got the role reversal symbol there as he's spending much more time in the middle, which is a good sign as compared to his first 3 weeks. His CBA rate was a season high on the weekend against the Saints, which again is another good sign. But the fact he didn't get to 3 figures is slightly disappointing. 27 touches was over half contested. Is a good effort though. Dunks just cruising along. A nice little specky in the last got me up and about. Again, we've all got him. And Cameron had Ridley for company, as I mentioned earlier, and was really playing second fiddle to the Tomahawk, but at halftime still had 12 touches and a couple of goals for 53 points. Kicked 1 in the third. No idea how Zerk Thatcher didn't touch that one, but 3 tons on the trot. He couldn't keep it up, only scored the 88, but again, he has been fantastic this season. Onto the forwards, 250 to 500k. At the top list, we have Benny King. Kicked a couple in the first half to be sitting on over 50 points at half time. Thought this is looking all right. And then had another good second half to finish with 100 plus for the second week in a row. I don't think we bring him in. I wouldn't advise that. Of course, you can if you want. But if you are one of his few owners, then well done. This is all he needed to be a successful pick. Cash gen is certainly flowing. Chandler continues on with his great form. Early snagged a goal in the opening minute. Great opening quarter for 30 plus points. Kicked another goal to be on 50 plus points at half time. And again, finish off the game well. And all of a sudden, looking like a great on-field option again. He's reset his break even to 0, making some nice cash while delivering some ripper scores. A firm hold and one that is an absolute killer. I never brought him in. If you're in my position, we have missed a lot of cash gen here. Really, really disappointing. He's made, over 200k now. Been fantastic. The package, look, a bit of a knobhead, let's be honest, but he's been playing in the midfield and loving life. Can be very hot, very cold. The perfect F7 type player, not that we can really afford that luxury. If he goes off again, he could make a good 100k, so it's a play to consider as that lone wolf cash gen type move, but again, he needs to keep it up to make it worthwhile. A team high 80% CBAs is a great sign, but question marks, will they keep it up? I really don't know. If you could guarantee me that he'd get this amount of midfield time each week, then I'd probably go for it, to be honest. 20 contested possessions and 4-1 is a monster game that can't be overlooked. The more I think about it, the more I think it could work out if things go his way. Unfortunately for Fergie, he wasn't the main target inside 50 with Big Lewis back on the side. Only the 24 points at half-time. Had a nice goal assist from Bruce. Unlucky call at the start of the third. Then has a shot from the boundary. Missed kicks. Out on the full. Later on in the quarter, the poor bugger runs into the goalpost. Just wasn't his day. Went down into the rooms to get assessed. Toughed it out though and started on the field in the fourth. Had a juggler. Couldn't quite bring it in. Spent a lot of time on the bench in the fourth. Just couldn't manage to hit 30 points. And his first real blemish Supercoach wise in about a month. He's just been so consistent, but with that low score now in his cycle for the next two price rises, I think we say goodbye this week or the next. He's certainly done his job and we thank him for his service. Toby Green, one of the most talented players in the comp. Yeah, they love him or you hate him. Can't wait for that rivalry game this week against the Dogs. Think it was it Dalehouse from memory that he kicked in the face? I can't remember. But anyway, kicked 4 snags on the weekend to continue his good run of form. An underrated season Supercoach-wise in 2023. It's mainly due to the safer and reliable options we have with your Tarantos, your Dunkleys, Cogs, Rosies. But his scores read 91, 120, 101 and 114 in the last month. Jay-Z was on 24 points midway through the first, but then came off, went down into the rooms, lost a few points, but then came back onto the second, clawed his way to 36 points. It looked like a complete disaster was going to happen here, but then that was averted. A ripping third quarter, 7 touches and a contested mark, couple of tackles, and he moved up to 74. What a comeback. Ended on 100, and my respect levels for this bloke are through the roof after playing through obvious pain. Now, he's got some sort of plantar fascia concern, I believe, and we don't know if he's going to get up for this week, so be very careful looping in case he doesn't get up. Oh, I'm really hoping that he does, so. Sheasel had the 6 touches in the first, then started the second with a bang, quickly climbing to 42 points with around 14 minutes remaining on the clock. Finished with 10 touches for the quarter and 60 points at half-time. Another 9 touches in the third to be on 88. Then in the last, only the 5 touches, but at the end of the day, a nice 100-plus score and looking like keeper material again. As long as he doesn't receive close attention, I think he should be fine most weeks. Oscar Allen, although it's really his first failure, that break-even is in the red, and if he punches out another similar score this week against Richmond, then he'll start to leak a lot. So ideally, he's the perfect candidate to upgrade to a primo this week. Errol, he was back to his damaging best, 27 touches, over half of those contested, and went at 74%, much better than last week. Also kicked a goal and laid 6 tackles. A terrific all-round game from the young star, and this is why we held the faith after his poor performance last week. And Baker, for me, is a big worry. If possible, get out of the pick, but if not, just hold and hope he comes good. Looking very likely to leak a fair bit of cash, though. And we'll finish off with the forwards under 250k. Thanks as always for sticking with me. We do have a little bit of action here this week. A couple of bubble boys at the top. Sammy Simpson, a mature age rookie price player on the bubble, as I mentioned, possibly filling in for Stengel for the time being. Playing that small forward role isn't ideal for scoring, but if you are playing that role, you want to be in a successful team. So that's a plus for him. 10 touches, half contested, but only 50% efficiency. Kicked a couple of goals and had 5 score involvements, which got him up to a 58. DPP status is handy. Also kicked 2 goals a week before, so he is having some scoreboard impact. The main issue here, along with some questionable job security, is his inflated price. He's saving over 60k by going a Chincotta type player, or 40k over the next bloke we'll talk about. I do like him over Angwin, but the price puts me off slightly. If you already own Chincotta, he is the one you could look to get in. Remember that the future rookie pool is looking pretty dire at this stage, so you may want to jump on purely because he's available. And Angwin, the other player on the bubble, is a mid-forward rookie, and another one I'm not overly excited about. Job security concerns me. There are blokes like Weir waiting in the wings. He's playing on a wing, which isn't a fantastic role, and one that could be fluent with a number of players. He's played more of that defensive winger role. Heat map showed that he played 73% in the defensive half, 10 touches, 6 contested, but again, only went at 50% efficiency. 3 intercept possessions, but 3 turnovers. Not a high disposal winner, but has DPP, similar to Simpson, which is handy. I would prefer Chincotta as Simpson, as I mentioned, but if you can't afford Simpson, and you've got Chincotta, he's basically your only other option. I think he probably plays this week, but going into the future, who knows with these GWS rookies. Dylan Williams, oh man, this is the one that got away, or more appropriately, the one that got stolen by the sub-vest in his third game. Dead set spewing on this one. And look, some are really desperate for a downgrade. They don't like the Angwin types, they don't like the Simpson types, and they are actually considering him at this price. He has been playing really well and could have a decent amount of coin to make if he keeps his spot and if he stays away from that dreaded sub-vest. At the moment, his job security looks okay, but I think he could be only one bad game away from being dropped, which is scary when you are paying the inflated price. But if he pumps out another, say, 85 type score this week, you're probably laughing, and it would be a very astute purchase. Sturt was subbed for a score in the 20s, so far from ideal for those who bought him in. Very risky on-field pick, given the fact that he was taken out of the game last week. Job security, I don't think is great. If I was Longmuir, I'd certainly be playing him. We want to get some games into the young fellas, but I don't know what's going through his head. I think that he probably plays this week, but there's no guarantee. I'm not overly confident on that. Van Ruin only had a couple of touches, couple of tackles in the first, and then touch a ball with his head to deny corner goal. 12 points at quarter time. Only managed to add 4 more points in the second quarter. Thinking sub may have been coming unless he lifts. Had crawled up to 33 points by the end of the third. Still not subbed off. And we were hoping for another Wayne Carey performance in the last. But as my mate Brent said, on field, Van Ruin... Sorry. I've got it written down here. So he's a bloody rip up, my Brent. Van ruins my week on field, he said, and just couldn't produce. So still some cash to make, but oh look, in the short term, with that low score in his price cycle, what's he looking to go up? 18k this week, but unfortunately he's going to be a very, very slow boom. The next couple of blokes, oh look, they all three could be traded out. It's purely team dependent, but with Davey, he could play this week. You could hold on to him, that's fine. Humphrey, that break even is terrible. Not many people own him anyway. But Cam McKenzie, I do have the sell symbol on. We've been holding him for a while, but I just think it's time to let go. So that's it for now, guys. All the best of luck with your trade-ins and your trade-outs for this week. And I'll see you soon in the next one. Hopefully Friday night at the footy. Cheers, bye.